from this conference of scholars at open universities in South Africa. In a university, knowledge is its own end, not merely a means to an end. A university ceases to be true to its own nature if it becomes the tool of church or state or any sectional interest. A university is characterized by the spirit of free inquiry, its ideal being the ideal of Socrates, to follow the argument where it leads. This implies the right to examine, question, modify, or reject traditional ideas and beliefs. Dogma and hypothesis are incompatible, and the concept of an immutable doctrine is repugnant to the spirit of a university. The concern of its scholars is not merely to add and revise facts in relation to an accepted framework, but to be ever examining and modifying the framework itself. Freedom to reason and freedom for disputation on the basis of observation and experiment are the necessary conditions for the advancement of scientific knowledge. A sense of freedom is also necessary for creative work in the arts, which, equally with scientific research, is the concern of the university. It is the business of a university to provide that atmosphere which is most conducive to speculation, experiment, and creation. It is an atmosphere in which there prevail the four essential freedoms of a university, to determine for itself on academic grounds who may teach, what may be taught, how it shall be taught, and who may be admitted to study. And again, that's Justice Frankfurter in 1957, quoting the open universities in South Africa.
Stunning.
Stunningly, it's not prescient exactly. It's just, it's stunningly on point.
Yes, well articulated.
And demonstrates how far we are falling in our understanding of what it is that universities are for, what it is that science is, what it is that we are supposedly doing and supposed to be doing at all the levels in the university, from undergraduates through, senior PhD researchers.
Yeah, in fact, the line in there that hits the hardest for me, I'll be interested if it struck you the same way, is approximately dogma and hypothesis are incompatible.
Yes.
And this is the one-line repudiation of the entire mania over misinformation, follow the science, all of this. And it's what we have been trying to articulate throughout, is that, in fact, one has to be able to explore without guardrails, including many ideas that will turn out to be incorrect, in order to find things that we do not yet know to be true, that we will ultimately understand to be true. And for the universities to have participated, not just stood back, but participated in trying to regulate thought over what was believed to be true in a emergency, right? This was declared an emergency. That means it's emergent. That means nobody's an expert. It's all new.
That's an important point, the shared etymology of the two words.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally right there. They're telling you this is a realm in which nobody is expert, which means that we are going to have to try out a whole group of ideas, most of which will turn out to be false, and then some of them will be stubbornly robust and refuse to be falsified, and we will ultimately recognize that those are the true ones. Who the hell were these people telling their own employees and the rest of the world what they were required to think?
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's that line. Dogma and hypothesis are incompatible. And I think in part it reveals, that is simply true. And what we saw among so many who claim to be people of science and people of medicine, which needs to be informed scientifically, even if it is understood to be a practical application of scientific understanding as opposed to a science in and of itself, what we saw revealed was something that we'd been seeing since we started out in academia, which is that unfortunately many people, even who are actively getting or have already gotten credentialed in science, don't appear to understand what it is that means. And so you will see people claiming, it's not about the pursuit of truth. Really? Well, then what is it about? Oh, hypothesis doesn't matter. Seriously, what does then? And so we have the rise of insidious, seemingly obvious phrases like data-driven science. No, it's not how it is. And yet, from well back before we had any kind of a public stage, we were seeing this at universities that we were affiliated with. Claims that to do science, you needed to be data-driven. That suggests that the data come first. The data never come first. The data are a test of a hypothesis, which means that the data come first. You have not tested a hypothesis, in which case they're not data in support of any scientific conclusion.
Yeah, they're observations. They can lead you to a hypothesis.
Right. So just a few more words from Frankfurter. These are actually his words in this concurring opinion from 1957. You can show my screen if you like. Here, Zach. I've just got a few little sections here. He says, progress in the natural sciences is not remotely confined to findings made in the laboratory. Insights into the mysteries of nature are born of hypothesis and speculation. For society's good, if understanding be an essential need of society, inquiries into these problems, speculations about them, stimulation in others of reflection upon them, must be left as unfettered as possible. Political power must abstain from intrusion into this activity of freedom, pursued in the interest of wise government and the people's well-being, except for reasons that are exigent and obviously compelling. One more. This means the exclusion of governmental intervention in the intellectual life of a university. It matters little whether such intervention occurs avowedly or through action that inevitably tends to check the ardor and fearlessness of scholars, qualities at once so fragile and so indispensable for fruitful academic labor. So here we have Frankfurter arguing for ardor, interesting word here, the ardor and fearlessness of scholars. Once again, qualities at once so fragile and so indispensable for fruitful academic labor. And of course, that is partly what tenure is supposed to provide. Right? This is the point of tenure. Tenure has problems for sure, and I have heard, and I have found myself on the side of arguments on both sides of the argument with regard to tenure. And one of the strongest arguments for tenure is that it means that the scholar, the faculty member who has tenure, cannot be gone after on the basis that his job is at risk by the administration, by his or her colleagues. Of course, tenure doesn't turn out to be the kind of security that we might have thought it did, as we learned ourselves at Evergreen six plus years ago. But that is what it is supposed to do. That early in a faculty person's career, if they are tenure track, which means that they have the chance to secure tenure at some point, and this is putting aside the fact that I think it's now a majority of faculty who aren't even tenure track. So that's just a whole different kind of insecurity that is being created by a system that is just off the rails. But an early career tenure track faculty member may play it a little bit safe until they get tenure, at which point they are supposed to know that they are free, that any fear that they had of retribution for investigating questions and problems that are considered figured out. We've done that. You don't need to ask those questions anymore. Oh, that's not the kind of questions we ask now. Oh, good people don't ask those questions. Well, you know what? I've now got tenure. I'm going to ask the questions that interest me. That's supposed to be what tenure offers.
Yes. The problem, of course, as we've discussed before, is that this is a system that trains people such that at the point that they get tenure, they have no recollection of how they might use it usefully.
Right.
And in fact, during COVID, the number of tenured academics who stood up and said the obvious was tiny. Because so basically this is a training program that is, for whatever reason, built to ensure that when you get tenure, you won't use it.
Yes.
So that is a tragedy, and it's not an argument against tenure itself. It's an argument against a system that functions in such a way that it trains you not to make use of it when you attain it. It could be resurrected if you fixed that aspect of the system, but that would have to be done quite deliberately. And at the moment, it's another one of these well-intended programs that has unintended consequences that render it worse than useless.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and that is where I fall now. Actually, with regard to tenure, and I'm shocked.
Yeah,
I find myself there.
No, it is necessary that something do the job of creating a zone of safety for renegades, because frankly, they're the ones who figure out where the future is.
Right.
Wanted to point out a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
Evergreen, as you well know, was founded by true radicals who threw out every single component of a normal university that wasn't, bolted to the floor. They threw out departments, they threw out tenure, they built something parallel to these things, but not exactly the same. But they also changed the fundamental logic of academic freedom. And you can hear it in that quote that Frankfurter is giving voice to in his opinion there, where the university has the right to hire who it would hire and to say what will be taught there and in what way it will be taught. That is not how Evergreen worked.
And be admitted to study.
Right. But at Evergreen, professors literally had the right to choose what they wanted to teach and in what way to teach it, which was a disaster when a professor wasn't up to that challenge. There was a lot of bad teaching there, but there was also a lot of excellent teaching because the administrators were not in a position to tell the professors what to do, and so a good professor could make a lot of use of that freedom. So anyway, the way I see it now, that is effectively a libertarian view of academic freedom, right? If institutions are free to hire those that they would hire to teach what they would have taught in the ways that they want it taught. That's very different than the individual they have hired being liberated to teach whatever they think needs to be taught in whatever manner they feel like teaching it.
Yeah, no, and there's this incredible tension, and I've seen people who I understood to be on one side politically come down very strongly on the other side of this issue, and in both directions, and I guess I'm not so surprised anymore, but I've seen, avowed conservatives saying that the choices of what to teach and how to teach it needs to be in the hands of the administrators, and I recoil at this. This is utter insanity. On the other hand, given what so many faculty are thinking now or failing to think, and what they think is passing for scholarship, and what they are therefore passing into the brains of students, well, I don't want those faculty near the fragile new brains of people that I care about either. On the other hand, are the administrators better?
No. There's no solution
of course
in that
they're
pairing.
not. There's no solution in that pairing. What you need is actually excellent, independent-minded, creative, analytically capable thinkers who are not just courageous about asking questions, but courageous but confident enough in their own selves to get up in front of a room of 18-year-olds or 25-year-olds or whatever and say, here's what we're talking about today. We're talking about it because I chose for us to be talking about it, and I am well-versed in several aspects of it, and I expect that I know more than all of you about most aspects of it, but there will be gaps in my knowledge. I will be wrong about some things, and I encourage you to think through what it is that I'm saying, and if you find those gaps or those errors, to respectfully, carefully, don't make the sport out of this, but to bring those to my attention, and let's figure it out together, because the point here is figuring out what is true and what is right, not having you, the audience, the students, just bow down to me because I came in here with a PhD. And how rare are faculty like that? Unfortunately, extremely rare.
Well, they are rare in part because of the hegemony of a system that has constructed a mechanism for distributing dogma in the guise of science, right? In other words, the university has been broken for a very long time, right? It's now in collapse, and obviously so. But that was true. The collapse was beginning back when you and I were college students. We could see it.
Yep.
And so what happens if...
So who knows how long before that, right?
Academic generation after academic generation passes with a system of power being used to train people not to use tenure, right? So what you don't have is a institution full of scholars who are used to, rattling each other's cages and, discovering errors and thinking and, moving the ball forward. What they are is compliant with a political order inside the university that pretends to be something else. So when they train their students, those students pick up this cowardice And that's what we saw, an epidemic of cowardice in the university system in the face of obvious nonsense, that is analytical nonsense, which it was unable to call out. And it is not surprising that 2 or 3 academic generations later, you can say, well, do I want the faculty empowered or do I want the administrators? I don't want any of those idiots empowered, right? I want something else. I want people who actually know what they're doing, and there aren't enough of them.
Not that faculty, not those administrators.